everybody, it's Josie with Ozark Mountain Goods. Today we are canning chicken. So if you've never done that before, some of the supplies that you're going to need will be a good pressure canner, canning jars. They do not have to be sterile, just clean, and lids and rings, and of course your chicken. So a couple of things I want to mention before we get started. If you've watched my video on canning beef, you might notice that I actually topped up my jars with boiling water. Now, if you watch any videos out there, probably 99% of them are going to say don't add any water. I don't know why they don't want you to add water, other than the fact that the meat will produce its own broth. But I choose to add some water to mine, and I've never had a problem with it. I'll be adding a little water to my chicken today as well. But again, when you do some research, you're going to see that all the recipes say do not add water. It does produce its own broth, but only maybe enough to fill half the jar. And I prefer to have more broth in mine because I actually use it in a number of the recipes. Plus, I like the meat to be a little bit more submerged in liquid rather than open to the air that's in the jar. So, that being said, we're just going to get started. So again, you need to have clean jars. And I'm using quart-sized jars today. You can use pint jars, but you need to know that if you're putting drumsticks in them, they'll probably be a little bit too long to fit in a pint-sized jar. Now, we have used pints in the past, and so what we've done is to actually take our drumstick and chop the joint off. And then they fit in there very nicely. But anyway, that's not necessary today because I'm using quarts. And the cuts of chicken that I'm using are thighs and legs. We happen to prefer dark meat over white meat, and so that's why I'm doing that. So, the additives that I'm getting ready to use are optional. Again, you may see that there are salt in some recipes and some recipes don't have salt. But I choose to add a teaspoon of salt to my jars. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I don't know how many jars I'm going to get, but I'm guessing I'm going to get at least maybe 10 or so. So I'll do 10 jars. And then another additive that I'm using is Better Than Bouillon. As I just said, I prefer to have a little more juice and broth in my jars of canned chicken. And by adding the water and this Better Than Bouillon, it really enhances the flavor. It doesn't, I don't think, change the flavor. It just makes it a little bit more robust. So I'm going to add a teaspoon of Better Than Bouillon chicken flavor to these jars as well. So once you get that added, it's just a matter of filling your jars with the meat. So I'm going to start with a thigh on bottom, and these are bone-in, and they consider this the raw pack method. Okay. I have got 2 thighs and 2 legs in here, and I think I could maybe get another leg in there. So we shall see. Yeah, great. That's perfect. Still leaves me with about 1 inch of head space. And there's not all that much air in there, so I don't think I'm going to need too much water to top it up with, but we shall see. So I'm going to set that aside and fill my next jar. So you might be asking yourself, you know, why do I want to can chicken? Well, other than the fact that it's super, super handy, it sure does speed up the cooking process on some of my recipes. For instance, I love to make chicken and noodles, and it can be a lot longer process if you're having to, you know, boil your chicken first. But with this, I can just open up a jar of my canned chicken and add some more broth to it and make my homemade noodles that way. Another way to use canned chicken is to make chicken casserole with it, which I love. It's absolutely delicious. Also, you can make chicken patties, kind of like a salmon patty, and then pan fry that. And it's really good that way. You could also shred the chicken up and make barbecue chicken out of it. So there are a number of things you know, that you can do with that that makes it really handy on the homestead. I wanted to mention that the chicken will be, you know, fully cooked when you open your jar. And so if your recipe doesn't call for shredding the chicken, I would probably add it in at the end. For instance, in my chicken casserole, I don't really like my chicken shredded. I prefer it in pieces instead. And so once I get my casserole assembled, I would then go ahead and open up my jar of chicken, take the skin off, you know, debone it, and then gently fold that into the recipe so that it isn't into little shredded pieces. Okay, I got my jars filled, and I didn't get 10, but I got 9, so that's pretty good. The next thing I'm going to do is add some boiling water. Again, if you are uncomfortable with this part of the process, skip it and just let the chicken make its own broth. I'm not going to fill it as full as I normally would. And then I take my plastic knife and go around the edges and try to get as many of the air bubbles out as I can. Obviously there's still going to be some air in there because I'm not filling these completely with liquid. So I've got the amount of water in them that I want, and now I'm just going to clean the edges of the jars off. Some people use vinegar for this. I've always just used water on a paper towel, but by all means you can use white vinegar, and that'll do a real nice job of cleaning your rims off as well. And next it's time for the lids and rings. You want these to be fingertip tight, and make sure you've got at least 1 inch of headspace. Now, because I'm using quart jars, these are going to be processed for 75 minutes at 10 pounds of pressure for my elevation. So be sure to check your canner and your elevation so that you have the proper settings when you do this. Okay, into the pressure canner they go. My pressure canner requires 3 inches of water in the bottom of it, and once it starts heating up, it will need to vent for 10 minutes before you put the jiggler on. These won't entirely fit on one layer, so I'm going to put a spacer. All right, we'll get those cooking, and when we come back, you will see our finished product. Might be a bit hard to see, but the spout has started to vent, so I've set my timer for 10 minutes. My 75 minutes are up, so it's time to get them out and see how we did. Okay, there you have it, 9 quarts of canned chicken. If you do decide to give this a try and you want to add water, just add a scant amount so that it doesn't overflow the jars. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please be sure to like us, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and as always, we will catch you later.